Port Sylvan was not merely a city, it was a mood, a fictional East Coast harbor town that perpetually smelled of salt, diesel, and the iron grip of old money. On this particular afternoon, it mostly smelled of rain. A cold, persistent drizzle slicked the cobblestones of the Wharf District, blurring the neon sign of the Lark and Loam Café. Ilara Knox, 32 years old, sat under the cafe's narrow awning, her lightweight wheelchair positioned parallel to the window. Her reflection showed a woman with a strong jaw and eyes that were tired of fighting, a UX designer and a single mother. Her phone was still warm in her hand, the screen dark. The last message, however, was imprinted on her mind, glowing like a fresh wound. "So sorry, something urgent came up." It was the third urgent thing this month from 3 different men. Ilara knew the real reason. It always came after her follow-up text, the one she sent an hour before any date. "Just so you know, I'll be the one in the lightweight chair. See you at 3. First came the silence, then came the excuse. It was always the chair. A familiar, cold humiliation washed over her, sharp and acidic. It had taken months of courage to reactivate the dating profile, months to convince herself that she was more than the injury that had stolen the use of her legs. And in one casual, cowardly text, she was reduced back to an inconvenience, a logistical problem. The empty bistro chair across from her felt less like an absence and more like a public accusation. She was blinking back the sting, focusing on a crack in the pavement, when a blur of motion broke her focus. A small child, maybe 4 years old, darted past a server who was deftly balancing a tray of lattes. The boy zipped across the damp pavement and stopped, abruptly, directly in front of her wheelchair. He tilted his head, his eyes impossibly wide and clear. A smear of pink cotton candy stained the sleeve of his expensive-looking jacket. "Are you sad, lady?" Ilara startled. The directness of children was a unique kind of assault, leaving no room for polite defenses. She forced a small, tight smile. "Just a little disappointed, sweetheart." "Oh," he nodded sagely, as if considering a complex problem. "I get sad when my robots break." "Milo." The voice was not loud, but it cut through the street noise like honed steel. Ilara looked up. A man stood a few feet away, tall, dressed in a black wool coat that looked too fine for the weather. He was not breathing hard, despite having clearly chased the boy. He moved with an unsettling stillness, an economy of motion that radiated pure, quiet authority. This was not a man who ever had to raise his voice to be obeyed. "My apologies," Cashin Vale said, his gaze finding his son. He breached containment. He stepped forward, his eyes, the color of the harbor just before a storm, flicked once to the empty chair opposite Ilara. He registered the entire scenario, the single coffee cup, the waiting, the disappointment in less than a second. His gaze returned to her face. The assessment was swift, total, and, remarkably, devoid of pity. It softened, just barely. "He didn't bother me," Ilara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He's bothering the staff," Cassian countered smoothly. He looked at Milo, who was now examining the carbon fiber spokes of Ilara's wheel with intense interest. "Inside, hot cocoa, 5 minutes, then we go." Milo beamed. Cashin bought the cocoa and brought it out himself, setting the steaming ceramic mug on the small table. He did not sit in the empty chair. Instead, he stood back, leaning against the cafe's cold brick exterior, a guardian in expensive wool. And he watched. He watched Ilara talk to Milo. The boy was a whirlwind of energy, asking if her fast chair had lasers, if she could do wheelies, and if it could fly. Ilara, to Cassian's silent appreciation, fielded every question with a patient, dry humor. She did not talk down to him. She did not use the high-pitched, saccharine tone most adults reserved for children. She treated him like an intelligent, albeit small, person. "No lasers," Ilara said seriously, tapping the titanium armrest, "but it has an excellent turning radius. Very good for escaping broccoli." Milo giggled, Coco leaving a frothy mustache on his upper lip. Cashin's posture relaxed fractionally, but his observation remained intense. He saw the dignity in the set of her shoulders, the intelligence in her quick replies. He saw the steel beneath the damp afternoon's profound disappointment. A vibration. Cashin did not reach for his pocket. He simply tapped the watch on his wrist. The screen glowed faintly with an encrypted notification. Across the street, parked by the quay, a man reading a newspaper immediately folded it. He got out of the sedan and began walking toward the next block, his path casual but deliberate. A second man, previously unseen, emerged from an alleyway and took the first man's route. The security perimeter had just rotated. Alara, busy wiping Milo's chin with her own napkin, noticed nothing. But Cashin had gone utterly still. A black SUV, its windows tinted to opacity, cruised past the café. It had no license plates. It slowed just enough, an apex predator scenting the air. Alara felt the shift before she saw it. The air pressure around the man in the black coat changed. His breathing seemed too shallow, his shoulders setting in a way that was instantly, terrifyingly territorial. He was no longer a father watching his son drink cocoa. He was a Don holding his ground. The SUV moved on, turning the corner and disappearing. In a blink, the man was gone. The relaxed father returned, pushing off the wall with a smile meant only for Alara. It was a practiced, disarming neutralization of a threat she had not even seen. "Time's up, soldier," Cashin said to Milo. "Ah," Milo protested, but he drained the mug obediently. He fumbled in his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, shiny robot sticker. He pressed it firmly onto the back of Alara's hand. "To protect you," Milo announced. Alara looked at the small, metallic sticker, a strange tightness forming in her chest. Cassian stepped closer, retrieving the empty mug. His voice was low, meant only for her over the hiss of the rain. "You were treated rudely this afternoon." It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Alara's chin lifted. "I'm fine." "I'm sure you are," he said, his gaze holding hers, refusing to let her hide. "But incivility leaves a bad taste. Could I perhaps redeem Port Sylvan's heart? A proper cup of tea. Somewhere civilized. Somewhere they don't cancel." Alara searched his face. He was offering a lifeline, but it felt weighted, heavy as harbor iron, yet the humiliation of the afternoon still stung. This man, this powerful stranger, had seen her at a moment of profound vulnerability and had not looked away, nor had he offered the simpering, pathetic kindness she despised. "One condition," Alara said, her voice firm. "No pity. I'm not a project." Cashin Vale's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. It was not quite a smile, but it was warmer. "Ma'am," he said, the word rumbling with assurance. "Nobody pities a steel spine." He nodded once, took Milo's hand, and they were gone, disappearing into the gray mist of the harbor district. Alara watched them go, the robot sticker gleaming on her hand. The world pulled back, the camera of the mind zoomed out, rising above the slick street, past the steaming vents of the Lark and Loam. High above, on the rooftop of the adjacent warehouse overlooking the café, a figure lay prone. The glint of a high-powered sniper scope swept the street where Cassian had stood. It paused, then lowered. Someone else was watching Cashin Vale, and they had just watched him stop for her. The Green Line Conservatory was a cathedral of glass and steam, a stark contrast to the gray, damp chill of the wharf. It smelled of humid earth, jasmine, and the sharp citrus of blooming orchid trees. Cassian had chosen a bench carved from teak, set back in an alcove of tropical pitcher plants. It was, Alara noted with her designer's eye, a location that was simultaneously public yet intensely private. She had met him here, half expecting another last-minute cancellation, but he had been waiting, Milo at his side. To her own surprise, Alara found herself talking. The quiet, unwavering focus he directed at her was disarming. He did not interrupt, nor did his eyes drift to her chair with that familiar, awkward pity. It was a drunk driver, 3 years ago," she heard herself say, the words falling into the humid air. "He hit the highway divider, and my car clipped his spin out. 3 surgeries later, this is the new normal." She gestured to the chair. "I design user experiences for a living. I suppose this," she tapped the armrest, "is the ultimate lesson in user experience." She told him about her daughter, Nova. "She's 6 years old," Alara said, the practiced defensiveness in her voice softening into a genuine smile. "She just started wheelchair ballet." Cashin's gaze remained fixed on her face. "Wheelchair ballet? That sounds competitive," Alara finished, with a short laugh. "You have not seen true intensity until you have seen a half-dozen 6-year-olds choreographing synchronized spins to pop music." Nova, naturally, believes she's in charge of the entire production. "It seems to run in the family, then," Cashin observed, a slight smile touching his mouth. Alara realized the conversation had been entirely one-sided. "And you, Cassian, you're not from Port Sylvan. What is it that you do?" His posture did not change, but a subtle guard clicked into place. His eyes shifted from her face to the exotic flowers nearby. "I oversee a private logistics network," he said. The words were smooth, corporate, and deliberately vague. "Vale Holdings. We manage the movement of specialized assets." He offered nothing else. No details about his past, no mention of Milo's mother, no explanation for the aura of command that clung to him like the expensive wool of his coat. Milo, having exhausted his patience for adult conversation, suddenly ran up to Alara. "Miss E, look." He thrust a small, articulated robot figure into her lap. "This is Unit 73. He has plasma cannons and a stabilization field." Alara's eyebrows rose. "Miss E." He has a deep respect for titles, Cassian supplied, his voice softening as he watched his son. Alara took the robot, examining its joints with genuine interest. "He's magnificent, Milo. Very powerful stabilization field." A comfortable silence settled, a fragile bond woven from shared humor and a child's obsession with robots. It shattered in less than a second. Alara saw Cashin's focus snap from his son to the glass entrance of the conservatory. His entire body went still. Following his gaze, Alara saw 3 men loitering just outside the main doors. They were dressed in heavy dockworker jackets, too warm for the humid interior they were pretending to consider. They were trying to look casual, but they failed. The light caught the ink on the thick neck of the man closest to the glass, a stark, black anchor. The Ravetti crew, even Alara, who stayed far from the harbor's criminal whispers, had heard the name. The air pressure changed. A man Alara had barely registered, a quiet visitor examining a nearby display of ferns, straightened up. He put one hand to his ear, his body subtly angling to position himself between Cassian's bench and the entrance. Cassian stood, the movement fluid and absolute. The relaxed father was gone. In his place stood the man from the rainy street, the one who breathed authority. "Milo," he said, his voice low and calm, "we are leaving." "But I didn't show her the rocket pack," Milo protested. "Now." The command was not up for debate. Milo immediately went to his father's side. Cassian turned to Alara, his eyes dark with an urgency that bordered on anger. Though it was not directed at her, "Alara, my apologies. A sudden logistics issue." He reached into the inner pocket of his coat. For a wild moment, Alara thought he might be reaching for a weapon. Instead, he produced a thick, cream-colored card. "This is an inadequate apology," he said, pressing the heavy invitation into her hand. "But please, it is a fundraiser for the Meridian Relief Trust, this Saturday, 8 o'clock. He did not wait for her answer, with his hand firmly on Milo's shoulder, and the fern watcher now walking 2 paces behind them. Cassian moved toward a secondary exit, vanishing behind a wall of tropical foliage. Alara's apartment at Gannett Pier was her fortress, a small, functional space where everything was built to her level. It was her safe harbor, overlooking the churning gray water of the Sound. She was reheating pasta, the heavy invitation resting on the counter, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She balanced the phone on her shoulder, stirring the sauce. "Hello?" A voice answered. Female. Smooth and chillingly calm. "Ilara Knox, stay away from Vale. You are swimming in water far too deep for your chair." The line clicked dead. Ilara's hand froze. The pasta spoon clattered against the pot. It was not the vague threat that frightened her. It was the absolute lack of emotion, and the specific, cruel mention of her chair. "Who was that, Mom?" Nova wheeled herself into the kitchen, her own chair a custom-painted, vibrant purple. At 6, she had mastered the art of the silent approach. "Wrong number, baby," Ilara said, her voice sounding unnaturally high to her own ears. Nova tilted her head, her expression uncannily perceptive. "Was it the man in black, the one you told me about, the one with the little boy?" "No, sweetheart, just a sales call." "You're smiling with your eyes," Nova announced, as if diagnosing a symptom. "You do that when you solve a hard design problem, or when you're nervous. You like him." Ilara had no reply. Later that night, long after Nova was asleep, Ilara sat at her workstation. The invitation was for an event at Auric Hall. It was one of the most opulent, historic landmarks in Port Sylvan, and, as Ilara knew from bitter experience, one of the most notoriously inaccessible. Her curiosity, now mixed with a sharp edge of fear, took over. She opened her browser and navigated to the regional disability forums she frequented. She typed Auric Hall accessibility. She expected a sea of complaints about 19th century architecture and non-existent ramps. Instead, she found pages of praise. A total miracle retrofit. Someone installed custom-built platform lifts, seamlessly integrated zero-grade ramps, and fully accessible restrooms on all 3 floors. It is the most accessible historic building in the state. One comment, posted 6 months prior, made her stop. Heard the whole project was funded anonymously by the Vale Foundation. They did it quietly. No press, no donor plaques, just done. The Vale Foundation, Cashin's private logistics network, apparently had a very quiet, very expensive charitable arm. A soft sound from the front door broke the silence of the apartment. A faint scratching. Then the soft thump of paper hitting the welcome mat. Ilara wheeled herself to the door. A plain, 9x12 manila envelope had been pushed underneath it. She pulled the deadbolt and retrieved it. It was damp from the night air. No address. No stamp. Her fingers, suddenly numb, fumbled with the clasp. Inside was a single, high-gloss photograph. It was her and Cassian, from that afternoon, at the conservatory. The shot was taken from a distance. Through the glass and the foliage, they were captured in that one moment of shared laughter. Ilara holding the robot, Cassian watching her, and Milo beaming between them. It was a moment of impossible, unguarded warmth. She turned the photo over. There was no note, only a stamp, pressed in stark, official red ink. Property of AIB, Atlantic Integrity Bureau. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. The men with anchor tattoos, the cold, threatening phone call. And now this. An agency she'd never heard of. Seemingly invented, yet disturbingly official. Cassian Vale was not just a reclusive philanthropist. He was a man with 2 distinct faces, one who funded accessibility ramps in secret, and one who attracted the attention of spies and criminals. And she, Ilara Knox, was now inextricably in the picture with him. Auric Hall was not just a building. It was a statement of Port Sylvan's oldest, hardest money. The air hummed with the sound of live jazz, the clink of crystal, and the scent of hothouse flowers. Marble columns soared to a gilded ceiling, and pearls gleamed on the necks of the city's elite. The light was the color of old gold. Ilara had navigated the entrance using the seamless, discreet platform lift, her anxiety warring with her pride. Nova, seated in her lap for the crowded entrance, wore a soft white dress with shimmering silver threads, looking like a small, fierce star. Cassian found them near the grand staircase, and he was not in a tuxedo, but a perfectly tailored dark suit that seemed to absorb the light around him, beside him. Milo held the hand of a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a calm, capable demeanor, Ray, the nanny. "Miss E. Nova," Milo chirped, running forward to compare the silver threads on Nova's dress to the chrome on his toy robot. Cassian's eyes met Alara's over the children's heads. He offered his arm, not to her, but as a gesture toward the room. "Alara, Nova, you both look magnificent." He introduced Ray, who nodded with a brief, professional smile. After a moment, Ray gently steered both Milo and Nova toward a quieter alcove where a magician was performing for the children. Then Cassian turned back to Alara. He did not ask. He simply stated, his voice pitched just for her, "The air is better on the balcony. Will you join me?" He placed his hand lightly on the back of her chair. The gesture was proprietary, public, and undeniable. As they moved through the crowd, a wave of whispers followed them, a subtle shift in the room's energy. Faces turned, conversations paused. "Is that Dawn Vale with her? Who is she?" On the balcony, the city glittered below them, a web of lights against the black velvet of the harbor. The cold air was a relief. "This is a long way from the Lark and Loam," Alara said, gripping the cool metal of her armrests. "It is only a different kind of jungle," Cassian replied, standing beside her. A man approached, his hand outstretched, a politician's smile fixed on his face. He was silver-haired, impeccably dressed. "Cassian, a wonderful event. The Trust is grateful for your support." "Director Druve," Cassian said, his voice smooth as glass. He took the man's hand. "Always a pleasure to support Port Sylvan's finest." The man, Director Cullix Druve of the Meridian Crime Authority, held Cassian's gaze just a fraction too long. Their smiles were identical, polished, sharp, and utterly devoid of warmth. They looked like two veteran chess masters acknowledging each other before a match. Druve nodded to Alara, his eyes registering her with a flicker of analytical curiosity. And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. "A friend?" Alara asked. "An associate," Cassian corrected. As if on cue, a flurry of red confetti, shot from cannons on the lawn below, drifted up past the balcony, dusting them in crimson. It was theatrical, beautiful, and slightly unreal. Cassian watched the red flakes settle on the stone railing. "My wife," he said, his voice suddenly quiet, stripped of its command. She loved moments like this, theatrical nonsense. Alara held her breath, stunned by the sudden vulnerability. "She passed away 2 years ago," he continued, his gaze distant. "A long illness, the doctors, they could not stop it." He turned his gaze back to Alara, and the raw honesty in his eyes struck her. "Milo is all I have left of her. He's the single most fragile thing in my world. Alara, the only part of my life that cannot be negotiated." Before she could find a word, a soft electronic beep sounded. It was not his phone. It was from the woman, Ray, who had discreetly positioned herself near the balcony doors. She tapped her watch, her expression flat, and subtly shook her head. The perimeter had been breached. Cassian's posture changed instantly. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the man from the conservatory. He leaned in, his voice a low, urgent whisper against her ear. "We must leave the balcony, now!" He guided her back inside, his pace swift. As they passed the entrance to a smaller art gallery, Alara overheard 2 men in dark suits, their heads bent close together. "No, cannot be delayed," one was saying, his voice a gravelly whisper. "The shipment arrives tonight at slip 17. Vale will have to choose, the MCA or the crew." Cassian did not slow, his hand firmly on her chair, steering her toward the main ballroom. The jazz trio had just shifted to a slow, bluesy ballad. The dance floor was filling. He stopped, turning her chair to face him. The frantic energy of the last few moments seemed to drain away. leaving a pocket of intense calm just between the two of them. "Alara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I am not exactly equipped for this part," she said, while gesturing to the dancers, a nervous laugh catching in her throat. "Neither am I," Cassian said. He held out his hand, not to her, but palm up, an invitation. "But I find I do not want to be standing on the sidelines. May I have this dance?" Her heart hammered. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, strong, and instantly steadying. He did not try to pull her from her chair. He did not attempt some awkward, pitying embrace. Instead, he rested his other hand on the upholstered back of her chair, near her shoulder. He drew a slow breath and stepped forward, his body close, his eyes locked on hers. He began to move, not in wide circles, but in a slow, gentle rhythm, guiding her chair with him. He led, she followed, the wheels rolling silently over the polished floor. They were a single unit, moving in time with the music. It was more intimate than any dance she had ever known. He held her hand, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin of her palm. His gaze never wavered. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the faint, clean scent of wool and something uniquely him. Her breath hitched, synchronizing with his. The world dissolved. There was only the music, the warmth of his hand, and the absolute, consuming focus of his stare. It was a promise, a question, and a confession. All without a single word. Her fingers tightened around his. A silent, thrilling current passed between them. A pure, PG-13 jolt of connection that was all about the spark, not the flame. The spell shattered. The golden lights of the hall flickered once, twice, and then went dark, plunging the ballroom into emergency lighting. The music died in a discordant electronic whine. A massive LED screen above the stage, previously showing images of the charity's work, lit up in stark, white block letters. A message appeared. "Port Sylvan does not tolerate false saints." A collective gasp went up from the crowd. It was a direct public challenge, a declaration of war from the Rivetti crew. Panic began to ripple. In the chaos, Cassian did not hesitate. He was already in motion, his hand protectively on Alara's shoulder. Pushing her chair toward the accessible service exit, he had clearly clocked the moment he entered the room. He moved with purpose, a predator cutting through the herd. He shoved open the door into a quiet, carpeted service hall, the alarm bells of the hall now ringing behind them. He turned, blocking the door, and looked down at her. His face was a mask of cold fury, his chest rising and falling. "Alara," he said, his voice raw, "you need to leave. My driver will take you and Nova home." "Cassian, what is happening?" He looked at her, the mask cracking. He saw her fear, and it seemed to break something in him. "I am not a good man," he confessed, the words torn from him. "I have done things, managed things that these people—" He gestured back at the ballroom. "Pretend do not exist, but I swear this to you." He knelt beside her chair, his gaze leveling with hers, fierce and absolute. "I will be good to you." The chaos of the gala was nothing compared to the cold, bureaucratic terror that arrived the next morning. It was not an envelope slid under her door. It was an official summons, delivered by a stiff-backed courier from the Atlantic Integrity Bureau. It named Alara Knox as a potential witness in an ongoing investigation into financial irregularities and potential money laundering associated with the Meridian Relief Trust. Alara's blood ran cold. The photograph had been a warning. This was the consequence. They had not just been watching her at the conservatory. They had been watching her before that. They had been tracking the trust, and by extension, its largest donor, Cassian Vale. And now, she was formally tangled in the web. The world suddenly felt sharp, hostile when she dropped Nova at school. The ordinary chatter of the playground seemed to grate on her nerves. She was saying goodbye near the gate when a woman with a clipboard and a strained, professional smile approached her. "Miss Knox, I am Tara Reeves from Child and Family Services. I was hoping we could schedule a time to chat about Nova's home environment. Alara's entire body went rigid. I'm sorry, about what? Just routine, the woman said, her eyes a little too bright. We received an anonymous tip regarding potential safety concerns, given your situation. She glanced meaningfully at Alara's chair. Alara's hands tightened on her wheels. My situation involves a fully accessible apartment and a daughter who is thriving, who filed this report. As I said, it was anonymous. The woman replied, unfazed. As she shifted her clipboard, the lapel of her blazer caught the morning light. Pinned to it was a small, enamel pin. It was not the standard, bland government logo Alara would expect. It was a small black anchor. Alara's breath seized. This was not a social worker. This was a message from the Rivetti crew. They were telling her, in the cold light of day, that they knew where her daughter was. She said nothing, her mind racing. She took the woman's card, her hand trembling almost imperceptibly. I will have to check my schedule, Alara said, her voice a flat, cold monotone. The moment she was back in her accessible van, she called Cassian. He picked up on the first ring. She did not waste time. They sent someone to Nova's school, a woman pretending to be a social worker, wearing an anchor pin. Silence, then his voice, devoid of all its earlier warmth, a blade of pure, cold fury. Ray is already on her way. She will pick up Milo and Nova and take them to Museo Key. They will not be out of her sight. Meet me at Sylvan Overlook in 30 minutes. Sylvan Overlook was a windswept park on the highest point of the city, a place where politicians gave speeches, overlooking the vast industrial sprawl of the port. Cassian was waiting for her, standing near the stone balustrade, his back to the city. He looked like a general surveying his battlefield. She is safe, Alara, he said as she approached, his voice tight. Ray has them. For how long? Alara shot back, her voice shaking with a rage that eclipsed her fear. What did you drag us into? Cassian AIB summons, threats at my daughter's school. Who are you? He turned to face her. The mask of the polished, reclusive philanthropist was gone. His face was hard, his eyes bleak. Vale Holdings is a shell, he said flatly. A very complex, very legal shell, but it was built to scrub clean the money that came before it. I run the Vale Syndicate. The Syndicate, Alara whispered. The name was legend in Port Sylvan. Smuggling, protection, logistics, the true unelected rulers of the harbor. You are a gangster. You are the Dawn. I am, he said, no apology in his voice. My father left me an empire of blood and shadow. I am trying to turn it into an empire of glass and steel. I am trying to make it legitimate. The Rivetti crew. They are old world. They thrive in the mud. They do not want the harbor to be clean because they cannot survive in the light. That message at the gala. The threat at Nova's school, they are trying to drag me back into a street war. And you put me in the middle of it, Alara's voice cracked. You put my daughter in the crossfire. Yes, he said. He stepped forward, and for the first time, he looked truly defeated. I saw you at that cafe, and for the first time in years, I acted without calculating the angles. I wanted something clean for myself, and I stained it by bringing it into my world. I accept full blame, Alara, but I will not let them harm you. He offered her a key card. This opens a panic room in your building and a private apartment upstate. I can have 24/7 protection on you and Nova by tonight. Alara looked at the key, then back at his face. I do not want your bodyguards. Cassian, I want this to stop. I have one condition. If I am, in this, then I have a rule. Anything. No violence around my child, she said, her voice fierce. No guns, no blood. I do not care what you are. You will not bring that world near my daughter. Ever. His eyes held hers, and he nodded slowly. I swear it. When Alara returned to her apartment building, the tension was a physical presence in the lobby. A man in a utility uniform was working on the ceiling panel of the elevator. Alara's eyes narrowed. As he looked up, She saw the telltale bulge of a shoulder holster under his coveralls. Before she could even react, Ray appeared, stepping out of the stairwell. "Ma'am, please take the stairs. The elevator is compromised." The utility worker saw Ray, saw Alara, and his eyes widened. He scrambled for his tools, but Ray was already speaking into her wrist. "Meridian Crime Authority, lobby elevator, active." The man bolted, shoving past them and out the front door. Ray calmly knelt by the open panel, her movements economical and precise. She pulled a small, metallic disc from the wiring, a bug. "He was MCA, Ray said simply, handing the device to Alara. "Not Rivetti. Director Dhruv is listening, too." Alara stared at the bug. This was Cassian's world, a world of constant surveillance, of competing threats, where the police were just another gang. That night, after checking the locks on her door for the 10th time, her phone buzzed with another anonymous text. "Slip 17 tonight. Do not let them lead you by the nose." Slip 17, the name she had overheard at the gala. Someone was feeding her information. Someone who was not Cassian, not the Rivetti, and not the MCA. A new feeling took root, pushing past the fear determination. She was a UX designer. Her job was to find the flaws in a system, to understand how a user was being manipulated, and to redesign the path she was not going to be a pawn. She opened her laptop and went to work. She did not need classified files. She just needed the public-facing Port Sylvan logistics interface. It was clunky, badly designed, and full of security holes she could see from a mile away. She cross-referenced the gala's date with the shipping manifests for Slip 17. She found it, a container, flagged for late-night customs clearance. Origin, a holding company she did not recognize. Contents, high-priority medical equipment. It was a lie. It was the shipment the men at the gala were talking about. This was the mud Cassian was trying to escape. She picked up the phone and called him. "You have a shipment coming into Slip 17 tonight, don't you?" Cassian was silent for a beat. "Yes. How did you know?" "It does not matter," Alara said, her voice steady, focused. "It is a container of medical equipment, and it is the leverage the Rivetti are using against you. If you want to be clean, Cassian. If you want that legitimate empire, you have to stop this. But you have to do it clean." "Alara!" "No knives," she insisted, her voice gaining strength. "No guns, no shadows. You do this with laws. You do this in the light, or I and my daughter are gone." There was a long pause on the line. She could hear him breathing, thinking. She could picture him at the overlook, staring down at the harbor. "In the light," he mused, his voice changing, the strategist returning. "Then we are going to need a stage. We need an audience, and we need spotlights." The plan was named Operation Spotlight Swap, and it was Alara's design. For 2 days, she lived on caffeine and adrenaline, her mind a flurry of code and social engineering. She built a sleek, convincing app for a fake civic event, the Safe Green Port Initiative, celebrating a new community rescue drill. She designed the user interface, created the press releases, and blasted the invites to every local news outlet and blogger in Port Sylvan, promising a major philanthropic announcement from Vail Holdings. While Alara built the digital stage, Ray's team handled the physical one. They were ghosts, installing high-definition, legally placed cameras on the rooftops of the warehouses surrounding Slip 17, citing security upgrades for the new civic-minded Vail Foundation. The night of the shipment was cold, the air sharp with the smell of low tide. Slip 17, usually a dark, industrial canyon, was bathed in the harsh white light of television cameras. A small podium stood in front of a massive, sealed Vail Holdings container, the one Alara had flagged. Cassian arrived last, playing the role of the benevolent billionaire perfectly. He stepped out of his sedan, not in a dark suit, but in a practical, expensive jacket bearing the Vail Holdings logo. He smiled for the cameras, his presence a shield. The Rivetti crew would not dare make a move in front of half the city's press. Alara watched from a command van parked across the lot, her laptop relaying Ray's camera feeds. She felt a sickening lurch as a black MCA vehicle pulled up. Director Kellex Druve stepped out, his politician's smile firmly in place. He strode to Cassian, shaking his hand for the cameras. "Director," Cassian said, his own smile just as polished. "Glad you could make it. Always good to have the MCA's support for community safety." "We are here to supervise, of course," Druve replied, his voice booming for the nearest microphone. "We must ensure all cargo meets Port Sylvan's safety standards." Alara's blood chilled. It was him, the man from the gala, the one with the dead eyes who had spoken to Cassian. He was not here to support, he was here to pounce. He knew what was supposed to be in that container, and he was here to catch Cassian red-handed, live on camera. "Let us begin the drill," Cassian announced. At his signal, the massive steel doors of the container were unsealed. The press surged forward, cameras rolling. The doors swung open. The container was packed to the ceiling, floor to roof, with boxes, but not with guns or drugs or unmarked cash. It was full of ventilators, boxes of surgical masks, and advanced patient monitors, all bearing the insignia of the Meridian Relief Trust. Alara stared, her mouth going dry. The manifest was real. It was 100% legitimate medical equipment. A collective, disappointed sigh went through the media. Druve's smile froze, a mask of pure, reptilian fury. He had been played. Or, Alara realized, they had... Cassian did not look surprised. He looked furious. His eyes, cold as the harbor, scanned the crowd and found Alara's van. He knew, instantly. The plan had been leaked. The shipment had been swapped. This was not a victory, it was a setup. He smoothly took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. As you can see, Vale Holdings is proud to partner with the Trust." He was already moving, handing the mic to an aide, striding toward Alara's van as reporters began to pack up, grumbling about a failed PR stunt. The moment he was inside the van, the door sliding shut, the facade dropped. "Get us out of here!" he snapped at the driver. The van pulled away, leaving the anticlimactic scene behind. "What was that?" Alara demanded, her voice shaking. "You set me up. That was a publicity stunt. You used me to clean up your image." "Do you think I wanted this?" Cassian's voice was a low growl, his fury barely contained. He slammed a hand against the wall of the van. "Do you think I wanted Kellex Druve at my back, live on television, waiting to arrest me? Someone cleaned that container before it even docked. Someone knew our entire plan. We have a mole, Alara. We are one step behind." "I do not believe you," she whispered, the betrayal stinging. "You lied. You are exactly what they say you are." "I did not lie to you," he said, turning on her, his eyes blazing. "I am not the one who—" His words were cut off by the trill of Alara's phone. It was not a call. It was a video message. She opened it. Her heart stopped. It was a live feed, shaky, as if from a hidden camera. It showed a brightly lit room, the Museo Key, the children's exhibit. Nova and Milo were laughing, heads bent together, building a tower of brightly colored blocks. Ray was visible in the background, watching them, her back to whoever was filming. Then the text message appeared beneath the video. "Choose the port or choose the kids." The air left the van. Alara could not breathe. This was not a threat about logistics. This was not about money. Cassian looked at the screen. The rage vanished, replaced by an absolute, terrifying cold. He hit a button on his own phone. "White Shield Protocol," he said, his voice unrecognizable. "Execute White Shield. Museo Key. Both children. Target is active. Move now." He turned to Alara, his face a mask of stone. "They are safe. Ray is the best there is, but they cannot go home, and neither can you." The van took a hard right, speeding away from the harbor. They ended up on the roof of a concrete parking deck, a desolate, wind-whipped place overlooking the highway. The rendezvous point, another black car, was already waiting. Alara was trembling. the video of Nova playing over and over in her mind. Cassian was on the phone, his voice a series of low, precise commands. He was moving his children, and hers, into a fortress. C-Ram Cathedral. He called it a Vale safe house. Alara had simply nodded, numb, agreeing to the protection. He finished the call and stood in the biting wind, the city lights a cold blur far below. "They are secure," he said, his voice raw. "They are on their way." Alara just stared at him, the tears she had refused to shed now blurring her vision. "This is your world," she whispered. The words choked. "This is what you promised would not touch her." He came to her, kneeling in front of her chair, heedless of the oil-stained concrete. He looked broken. "I know, and I failed." "I'm so scared, Cassian." "I know." He reached out, not to kiss her, but just to touch her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. His hand was shaking. The sight of this powerful, controlled man, trembling, undid her. She leaned forward, and he met her halfway. It was not a dance. It was a collision. It was not gentle. It was desperate. A raw, frantic claiming in the cold night air. His mouth was firm, his lips chapped by the wind, and he tasted of salt and fear. It was the first time she had truly felt him, the solid, living man beneath the armor of the dawn. His hands came up, not to her body, but to grip the sides of her chair, holding her, anchoring them both. It was a kiss of shared terror and a desperate promise. Alara's hands found his shoulders, her fingers digging into the thick wool of his coat, holding on as if the wind might tear them apart. He pulled back, just an inch, his breathing ragged, matching hers. He pressed his forehead against hers. Their breath mingled in a white cloud in the cold. "I will not let them win, Alara," he whispered, his voice thick. "I will keep you safe, both of you." She shivered, closing her eyes, feeling the solid press of his forehead against hers. It was the only solid thing in a world that had just dissolved into shadow. The C-Ram Cathedral was not a church. It was a reinforced concrete bunker disguised as a luxury penthouse, its windows overlooking the darkest, most turbulent stretch of the Port Sylvan Sound. It was Cassian's true fortress, and it was where Nova and Milo were now sleeping, watched over by two of Ray's trusted team. Alara, however, could not rest. Her mind, trained to see patterns and parse data, was on fire. The failed heist at Slip 17 was not just a leak, it was a performance. She sat at a secure workstation, pulling the high-definition footage Ray's team had captured. She was not looking at the container. She was looking at the periphery, at the crowd, the reflections, the people who should not have been there. And she found it. In the smoke glass window of a parked broadcast van, she caught a reflection. Director Culix Druve. Just seconds before he approached Cassian, he was not alone. He was in a brief, heated conversation with a man in a dockworker's jacket. The man turned, and the camera's zoom caught the glint of metal from his earlobe. A small, black anchor. Druve was not just watching the Rivetti crew, he was talking to them. "Cassian," she said, her voice quiet in the sterile, silent room. He was across the room, staring into the dark water. He came to her side. She pointed to the screen. "Your associate at the MCA is on the Rivetti payroll." Cassian's expression did not change, but a muscle in his jaw tightened. "It makes sense now," Alara continued, her mind connecting the nodes. "The AIB envelope. It arrived at my apartment less than 24 hours after we met at the conservatory. That is not an investigation. That is a message. Druve knew I was with you. He used his assets inside the AIB to send me a warning or to flag me as a pawn." Cassian was silent for a long moment. "I pay him," he said, the admission tasting like ash. "The syndicate has paid the MCA harbor stabilization fees for a decade. It was my father's arrangement. I continued it." "You bribed the police." "I pay them to keep the peace," he corrected, his voice hard. "To keep the Rivetti and their guns off the streets and contained to the old slips. I pay for orders. But Druve, he has gotten greedy. He wants more than money. He wants control of the harbor. He's using the Rivetti to bleed me, to force me into a war so he can swoop in and seize the entire network." "Why?" Alara asked. "Why this hatred between you and the Rivetti? This feels personal." It was Ray who answered. She had entered silently, carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea. "It is Miss Knox," she said, her voice low. "The Don's wife, Isabella. Her illness required a specialized pharmaceutical, the Rivetti crew. They ran a counterfeit operation. They flooded the regional supply chain with placebos. By the time the doctors realized her medication was ineffective, it was too late." Alara looked at Cassian, whose face had become a mask of stone. "After she died," Ray continued, "the Don did not just go to war. He performed a surgical extraction. He dismantled their entire counterfeit drug operation in one night, not with bullets, with data. He burned their labs, their accounts, and their supply lines. He cost them millions and exposed them. They have been trying to kill him ever since." Alara finally understood. The man who built accessibility ramps and the man who dismantled criminal empires were the same person, driven by the same precise, protective rage. "So we cut off the head," Alara said. Cassian looked at her. "Druve," she clarified. "He is the head. The Rivetti are just the weapon. We cannot fight them in the street, but we can expose the man who holds their leash. We need proof of the payments. We need the data that links Druve directly to the Rivetti." "That data would be in the Meridian data vault," Cassian said, shaking his head. "It is the most secure server in the city. It is impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Alara countered, her designer's mind already seeing the architecture. "It is just a system. It has flaws. You just need the right user." "Alara, no. This is not a web interface. This is a fortress. It is too dangerous." "And what we are doing now is not," she shot back, her voice rising. "Hiding in a bunker while our children are hunted. You want to live a clean life, Cassian. You want to be the man who builds things in the light. Then you have to get your hands dirty with intelligence today to wash them clean forever." His eyes searched hers, seeing the same steel he had seen at the café. No violence, and he said, "Just data," she agreed. "We use the law. We use technology. We do this my way." He nodded. A slow, final decision. "I have a team. They call themselves Blue Mist. They are specialists in digital infiltration. They will get you inside." Hours later, the tension was a living thing. The plan was set for the following night, for a few brief hours. Ray declared Alara's Lantern apartment building sanitized and secure. They needed a semblance of normalcy, a place to breathe before the plunge. In the familiar quiet of her own kitchen, Alara found herself chopping vegetables while Cassian, looking profoundly out of place, measured pasta into a pot. They moved around each other, a strange domesticity settling over them. "I dream, sometimes," Alara said quietly, her knife finding a steady rhythm, "of a house, not a penthouse, just a house, on the water, with ramps so perfectly graded you do not even notice them. And a glass elevator." "A glass elevator," he repeated, a small smile touching his mouth. He looked at her, his eyes tracing the line of her scar, the one that ran from her temple to her jaw, a faint silver map of the accident. He reached out, his finger tracing it, a touch so light it was barely there. "I see it." She looked at her own hands, at the calluses from her wheels. "We all have scars, Cassian." "Mine are just better hidden," he said. They ate in silence, the unspoken trust between them solidifying, a shared future feeling, for the first time, possible. As they were clearing the plates, Alara's phone, now a secure, encrypted device provided by Ray, buzzed on the counter. A new text from an unknown number. "You think you know him. You think he is your savior. Do not trust Vale. He is the one who killed your husband." Alara's hand froze. The plate she was holding slipped, striking the granite counter with a sharp crack. "Alara, what is it?" She could not speak. Husband, it was a word she had buried, a life she had walled off. It was not just her legs the accident had taken. Harlan Cole, a colleague, a brief. whirlwind marriage that had crumbled under the weight of her injury. He had not been able to handle the new normal. He had left, vanished. His paperwork filed from a foreign country, disappeared. But the text did not say left, it said killed. She looked up at Cassian, the man she had just cooked with, the man she had just kissed on a rooftop, the man whose team was about to break into a police vault for her. And she saw, for the first time, a stranger. The broken plate was a spiderweb of cracks on the granite. Alara's hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "Harlan Cole," she said, the name feeling like grit in her mouth. "My husband, the man who disappeared after my accident. The message says you killed him." Cassian's face was unreadable. He did not move, did not deny. He simply watched her, his gaze intense, analytical. "Show me." She handed him the phone. He read the message, his expression hardening. "This is a lie," he said, his voice flat. "How do I know that?" she whispered, the foundation of their newfound trust fracturing. "You are the Dawn. You make problems disappear." "Not like this," he said. He walked to the workstation and tapped the secure keyboard. "Ray, run a deep archive search. Harlan Cole, cross-reference MCA, Rivetti, and all financial consultation contracts from 3 years ago, now." They stood in agonizing silence, the only sound the faint hum of the server. Alara's heart hammered, caught between the man she was beginning to trust and the ghost of the man who had abandoned her. The results populated the screen. Cassian turned it so she could see. Harlan Cole's name was there, not on a syndicate hit list. It was on a Vale Holdings consultancy ledger. "He consulted for me." Alara was bewildered. "No," Cassian said, pointing to a different column. "He consulted for the MCA. He was on their payroll, analyzing harbor logistics, and..." He clicked another file, a bank transfer. "He was also receiving payments from a shell company, one I recognize. It is a Rivetti front." The truth was a cold, ugly thing. Harlan had not just abandoned her. He had been dirty. "Yes, he was a middleman," Cassian said, his voice low. "He was feeding MCA data to the Rivetti, or vice versa. He was playing both sides." "But he disappeared," Alara said. "He is dead." "The message says I killed him," Cassian pointed out. "But the Rivetti, or Druve, had just as much reason, or... He's not dead at all. He just became a very wealthy ghost. This message, Alara..." He turned to her, his eyes urgent. "It is not an accusation, it is a threat. They are trying to break us apart just before the operation. They know we are coming." The operation was a go. The Blue Mist team, 2 men and 1 woman as quiet and intangible as their namesake, slipped into the MCA building's maintenance sub-basement. Alara sat in the command van, parked 3 blocks away in a dark alley, her world reduced to the glow of 6 monitors. Cassian was with her, his presence a tense, coiled energy beside her. "We are in the main duct," the team lead's voice whispered over the comms. "I see you," Alara murmured. She was not just guiding them, she was seeing for them. She had hacked the building's internal schematic cameras and written a visual recognition algorithm. Her screen highlighted patrol routes in red and audio sensors in yellow. "You have a 2-minute window. Go." They moved through the guts of the building, a silent, black-clad trio. They breached the data vault's physical firewall and jacked in a hard line. Data began to stream to Alara's console. It was a deluge of encrypted files. "I am in," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols. "I'm looking for Druve's private accounts." She found them, and the payments, hundreds of thousands of dollars, funneled from Rivetti shell corporations. And then she saw the designation on the recipient wallet, an alias H. Cole. "Harlan," Alara breathed, the name tasting like poison. "He's the ghost. He's the one laundering Druve's money. He is not dead. He has been here all along." "Where is the money now?" Cassian asked, his voice lethally calm. Alara's algorithm sorted the transaction histories. It is not staying in a wallet. It is being consolidated. The trail ends at a physical asset, a mobile treasury. The GPS pings are all over the harbor. But the last one, Cassian. It is heading for slip 31, tonight. The Rivetti are moving their entire digital bank. Cassian realized they are running. We need that ledger, Alara said, her voice hard. All of it. We cannot just expose Dhruv. We have to seize the entire Rivetti financial network. Change of plans, missed one. Cassian said into his comms, Get out now. We're moving to slip 31. Understood. The team lead replied. Just as the team began to retract their line, a high-pitched alarm blared through Alara's speakers. Red lights flashed across her monitor. Silent alarm, the team lead hissed. We have been tripped. Someone new. A mole, Cassian swore. They let us in. Get to the roof, now. We have patrols converging on the stairwell. You will not make it, Cassian said, looking at the schematics. Go to the west to escape. I will buy you time. He was out of the van before Alara could protest, sprinting down the street toward the MCA building. Cassian, no. He ran straight at the front entrance, slamming his shoulder into the glass door just as two guards burst out. He created a perfect, loud, and violent diversion. Get the van to the west alley, he yelled into his own comms, shoving one guard into the other. Ray roof now. Alara's hands were shaking, but she slammed the van into gear. She tore down the alley, her tires screeching, timing her arrival for the exact moment the guards on the west side would be distracted by Cassian's brawl. She skidded to a halt, blocking the alley just as 3 MCA guards ran out, their guns drawn. They were carrying non-lethal, high-velocity rubber bullet rifles, but they looked terrifying. He is on the roof, one shouted. Sparks flew from the fire escape above as the mist team cut a lock. Cassian appeared, having fought his way through the lobby and scrambled up the ladder. A spotlight hit him. Do not move, Vale, a guard yelled. From the adjacent rooftop, Ray appeared. She fired a high-tension zipline. The grapple clamped onto the railing near Cassian. He grabbed the handle as the guards opened fire. The thwack, thwack, thwack of the rubber bullets impacting the brickwork around him was sickening. He clipped in and jumped, sliding across the dark chasm just as the mist team vanished over the other side. Alara's monitor, connected to Cassian's body cam, was a dizzying blur of motion. As he landed, he looked directly into the camera, his breath ragged. Trust me, he panted, a promise meant only for her. She wrenched the wheel, floored the accelerator, and the heavy van surged backward, crashing through a chain-link fence into the adjoining lot. They were out. They regrouped at the safe house, the adrenaline slowly draining, leaving a metallic taste of fear. We are dark, the misled reported, but we got the first packet uploaded to your server before the alarm. It is not enough, Alara said, staring at the partial data. It proves Dhruv took money, but it does not link to the mobile treasury. We still need slip 31. She felt a wave of despair. They had risked everything and only gotten half the prize. Her secure tablet chimed, a new video file. Her hands trembled as she opened it, expecting another threat. It was Nova and Milo, sitting on a cot in the safe house, their faces bright and serious. Mommy, Nova said, her voice tinny. Uncle Cass told us to guard the robots. We are keeping them safe. We are on a mission. Milo held his robot up to the camera. We are protecting you. Miss E, he said solemnly. Go get him. Alara watched the video twice, a slow, fierce strength burning away her fear. She looked at Cassian, her eyes clear and hard as steel. They are running, she said, so let us go hunting. The C-Ram Cathedral was silent, a fortress of concrete and armored glass suspended over the churning black ocean. The children were asleep, safe, 2 rooms away, but sleep was impossible. Alara sat in the observatory, a curved room where the windows met the floor, staring at the rhythmic sweep of a distant buoy light. It painted her face in green, then black, then green again. Cassian stood behind her, his reflection a dark shape in the glass. "I have spent my entire life building walls," he said, his voice low, breaking the silence. "Fortresses like this one, to protect my assets, my territory, my son. I never intended to bring anyone inside them, especially not someone who was already fighting her own war." He moved to stand beside her, looking out at the water, not at her. "I did not know what this feeling was, at first. At the café, I thought it was admiration. At the gala, I thought it was a desire. On the parking deck, I knew it was fear. Fear of losing something I had no right to hold." He turned, his gaze finding hers in the dim light. He knelt just as he had on the parking deck, bringing his eyes level with hers. "Alara, I am in love with you." She flinched, bracing for the words that always came next. "Let me take care of you. Let me fix this." But he did not say them. "But I need you to understand what that means," he continued, his voice rough with honesty. "This is not a rescue. You are the strongest person I have ever known. You do not need anyone to lift you up. You just need someone to stand beside you while you climb." He smiled, a broken, weary smile. "I am asking to be your ally, Alara, your partner." She did not reply with words. She reached out, her hand finding the hard line of his jaw. He was real. This was real. She pulled him toward her. He surged forward and their mouths met. The kiss on the rooftop had been desperate, fueled by wind and terror. This was different, and this was a slow, deliberate claiming. It was a deep, consuming kiss that spoke of trust earned and futures considered. It was the sealing of an alliance, a promise made in the dark. His hands found her, one cupping the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair. The other hand rested on the solid, strong frame of her chair, near her waist, grounding him. Alara's own hands moved, exploring the breadth of his shoulders, the tension in his neck. She met his kiss with an equal, rising need. It was a need to be seen, to be held, to be wanted, not in spite of her chair, but with it, a part of her. He broke the kiss only to press his forehead to hers, his breathing ragged, matching hers. "You are my harbor," he whispered. "And you are my storm," she whispered back. He kissed her again, slower this time, a long, searching exploration that left them both breathless. The air in the room was thick, charged with the energy of two worlds colliding. He traced the scar on her temple, and she shivered, leaning into his touch. The slow sweep of the buoy light illuminated the absolute trust in her eyes. He moved, his hand finding the cord for the heavy curtains. With a soft electronic whir, the thick velvet began to slide shut, plunging the glass room into an intimate, profound darkness, leaving the world and the war outside. Morning came too soon, gray and cold, the illusion of safety shattered with the arrival of a new, encrypted message on Alara's terminal. It was not words this time. It was a file, a complex, layered digital map of Slip 31, detailing guard patrols, server locations, and a precise pathway to the mobile treasury. Alara's breath hitched. This was the key. And then she saw the file's icon. It was not a standard folder. It was a small, cartoon robot, identical to the sticker Milo had pressed onto her hand at the café. A cold, sickening dread washed over her. "Ray," she called out. Ray was at her side in an instant. Alara pointed to the screen. "That is Milo's robot. They are using him. They are using the kids as bait. It is a trap." Ray's eyes narrowed. She ran a quick image search, her fingers a blur. "It is a trap," Ray confirmed, "but not the one you think." She pulled up a database. "This robot is from Mecha Force, a generic, mass-market toy line, sold in every drugstore in the city." "So it is not Milo," Alara said, relieved. "No, but the source of this file..." Ray traced the encrypted path. "It is a deep-level MCA. It is routed through the same dead-drop servers used by their confidential informants, the same ones Harlan used." The air left the room. "Harlan," Alara whispered. "Harlan is alive, and he is guiding us." Alara stared at the map. The man who had abandoned her was now, inexplicably, trying to help her, or trap her, or both. The revelation was staggering. If Harlan was alive, if he was the key to this, her future with Cassian was suddenly impossibly complicated. She looked at the door to the room where Nova was sleeping. This was never about Harlan. It was not even about her and Cassian. It was about that room. Lying low, running, letting Harlan and Druve and the Rivetti continue to exist. It meant the children would never be safe. They would live their whole lives in fortresses like this. She turned to Cassian, who had been watching her, letting her process. Her eyes were clear, the conflict resolved. "He wants us to take the treasury. He's trying to burn his old bosses. We are going—" "Alara, it is too much of a risk," Cassian argued. "It is the only way out," she said, her voice absolute. "We cut their money off. Tonight, we end this, or we spend the rest of our lives hiding from it." Alara contacted the only other player she trusted, Agent Priya Fenn, the name Ray had identified as the clean element within the AIB. "I have the map to the Rivetti treasury," Alara said, "and I am going to use it, but I need a legal perimeter. I need you to be the spotlight." Fenn's voice was crisp. "If you light it up, I will be there. I am activating a public interest alert if I receive a signal from you, or if I lose your signal, I will move on the MCA for corruption, armed with the partial data you have already sent. It is a legal dead man's switch." "Thank you," Alara said. They stood by the armored door of the safe house, ready to descend into the war zone. Cassian pressed a small, heavy, steel token into Alara's palm. It was cold and smooth. "This is the Ember Protocol," he said, his voice low. "It contains everything, my ledgers, my father's sins, Druve's payments, the Rivetti files, everything I have. Cassian, if I fall, if they take me and you cannot get me back, you press the center. It sends everything to Agent Fenn. It will burn the syndicate to the ground, but it will expose Druve and end the Rivetti. It will make you safe. You would destroy your whole world." "It is not my world anymore," he said, his eyes on her. "You and the children are—" Alara curled her fingers around the token. It was the ultimate act of trust. He was giving her the weapon that could destroy him. They looked at each other, the man who ruled the shadows and the woman who designed the light. Cassian reached out. Alara took his hand. Together, they stepped out of the fortress and into the night. The trust between them was the only armor they had left. Slip 31 was a graveyard of rusted cranes and forgotten cargo, the perfect place for a midnight transaction. Under the harsh glare of portable floodlights, a team of Rivetti men, dressed in black, were loading a reinforced, mobile server rack their digital treasury onto an armored truck. And watching them, his arms crossed, was Director Calix Druve. He was not here as a cop, he was here as a supervisor, ensuring his assets were secure. 2 blocks away, in the command van, Alara watched it all through the thermal lens of a mini drone, no bigger than her hand. "He is here," she whispered, her voice tight. "Druve is overseeing it himself. Then let us give him an audience." Cassian replied. He was in the driver's seat of a large Vale Holdings flatbed truck. He turned the key. The truck roared to life. He flipped a switch, and 2 massive Klieg lights mounted on the cab instantly bathed the entire slip in brilliant white light, turning night into day. He grabbed a loudspeaker. "Vale Holdings is proud to announce," his voice boomed, echoing off the containers, "an emergency, immediate donation of free medical supplies to the dock workers of Port Sylvan. All are welcome." Heads turned. In the nearby tenement blocks, lights flicked on. Dock workers, drawn by the commotion and the promise of free goods, began to emerge. The local press, already sniffing around the harbor after the Slip 17 debacle, pointed their cameras toward the light. The trap was set. The stage was lit. "Now, Ray," Cassian ordered. From the roof of the warehouse opposite the server, a dark shape rappelled down the wall. Ray, silent as a spider, landed behind the armored truck, unseen in the chaos, and jacked Alara's hardline into the server's auxiliary port. Data flooded Alara's console. It was the entire Rivetti financial history. Her fingers flew, her own custom-built algorithm slicing through the encryption. She found the payments to Druve, thousands of them, and she found the intermediary, Harlan Cole, Harlan Cole, Harlan Cole. Her hands were shaking. "Where is he?" she murmured. She ran a ping on the admin-level device associated with the Harlan Cole account. A red dot pulsed on her map, not in the server, not across the world. It was close. It was 100 feet away. "He is here," she breathed. She directed the drone, lifting it from the shadows, past the distracted guards, toward the slip's dispatch office, through the grimy window. The drone's high-definition lens focused. There he was. Harlan Cole, not dead, not a ghost. He was alive, healthy, and wearing an expensive suit. He was standing next to Calix Druve, and he was laughing, clapping the MCA director on the back. The ground fell away beneath Alara, the man who had abandoned her, the man whose death she had mourned, the man who had sent her the map, had been her enemy all along. The message had been a lie to break her. The map had been a trap. "He is here," she repeated, her voice dead, all emotion hollowed out. Druve, seeing Cassian on the truck, finally made his move. "That is Vale," he shouted to his MCA officers. "He's interfering with a police operation. Arrest him." The Rivetti men, now acting as Druve's deputies, moved in. One of them kicked open a crate they had planted, revealing a cache of illegal firearms. "He is armed. He is armed." They raised their weapons, preparing to gun Cassian down in what would be ruled a justifiable shooting. "No," Alara said, her voice a snarl. She slammed her fist onto a macro key. "You do not win." She initiated the arc light. Instantly, the complete unencrypted ledger of transactions, every bribe from Druve to Harlan, every blood money payment from Harlan to the Rivetti was blasted to every news server in the state. It was locked, mirrored, and irreversible. In the crowd, cell phones began to chime, the alerts spreading like wildfire. "My God," a reporter near the front whispered, reading the feed. "Druve. He is on their payroll." The crowd erupted. Squealing tires announced the arrival of new players. 3 black vehicles, sirens silent, cut off the exit. Agent Priya Fenn stepped out, her badge catching the light, flanked by a dozen AIB agents in full tactical gear. "Atlantic Integrity Bureau." Fenn's voice cut through the chaos. "This is a federal investigation. All MCA personnel are ordered to stand down now." Druve, trapped between the crowd, the AIB, and the truth, went pale. He panicked. He ripped his non-lethal sidearm from its holster and aimed it at Cassian. He is resisting arrest. In the dispatch office, Harlan saw Alara's van, the nest of antennas on its roof. He understood. He raised his own pistol, a real one, and took aim, not at Alara, but at the glowing server bank in the back of her van. "Alara," Cassian roared. He saw Harlan. He did not dive for cover. He dove at the van, shielding her technology with his own body. He would protect her, her work, their escape, at all costs. The children safe in the cathedral flashed through his mind. A deafening, deep blare of a ship's horn split the air. It was Alara. She had triggered it in the same instant. Her drone, which had been hovering directly above Druve and Harlan, opened its small cargo bay. A cloud of fine, gray-blue powder rained down, dusting their heads and hands. "What is this filth?" Druve sputtered, batting at the air. Alara hit one final key. The drone's high-intensity, ultraviolet spotlight flared to life, pinning Druve and Harlan in a circle of ghostly purple light. The powder on their hands, the hands that had counted the dirty money and keyed the dirty ledgers, flared a brilliant, sickening, undeniable green. Every camera, every cell phone, every AIB body cam in the slip captured it. The proof was visible, damning and irrefutable. Druve screamed, a sound of pure, cornered rage, blinded by the light. You think this is a win?" He shoved his sidearm away and ripped a folded document from his breast pocket, waving it like a white flag. "I have a warrant," he shrieked at Agent Fenn, "signed by a federal judge 2 hours ago for the arrest of Cassian Vale on charges of domestic terrorism and racketeering." A stunned silence fell. Agent Fenn looked at the warrant. It was legitimate. The knot tightened. Alara could only watch, her hand clutching the useless Ember token, as 2 of Fenn's AIB agents, their faces grim, stepped past the glowing, contaminated Druve. They walked up to Cassian, who stood tall, his face an unreadable mask of iron. They placed him in handcuffs. The climax froze, the victory, the data, the confession. All of it turned to ash as Alara watched the man she loved, the Don who had tried to get clean, being led away in chains. Alara watched the steel cuffs lock around Cassian's wrists. She saw the triumphant, venomous sneer on Druve's face. The warrant was legal. The trap, sprung by Harlan, had worked. Cassian had been caught in the gray area between his past and his future. But Cassian had planned for this. He had given her the Ember token. He had trusted her to burn his empire down if it meant keeping her safe. Her hand, steady as a surgeon's, held the token. She looked at Druve, at the agents, at the flashing lights. She would not let this be the end. She pressed the center. In Agent Fenn's command vehicle, a priority alert flashed, a massive, secure data packet, authorized by Cassian Vale's own encryption key, unlocked itself. It was the Ember Protocol. Fenn's eyes widened as she listened to the audio. It was Druve, clear as day, accepting a bribe. She saw the video, Harlan Cole very much alive, orchestrating the accident that faked his death. She saw the harbor protection contracts, the payoffs, the entire conspiracy. "Halt!" Fenn's voice boomed across the slip. She stepped out of her vehicle, holding her terminal. "AIB agents, stand down that warrant," and as she pointed at Druve, was issued based on fraudulent testimony. She looked at her team. "By the authority of the Atlantic Integrity Bureau, based on irrefutable evidence just received, I am placing Director Calix Druve under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." A federal judge from the fictional Court of Maritime Ethics, monitoring the sting, issued an immediate order. Cassian Vale's status is hereby changed from suspect to material witness for the prosecution. Release him immediately. Harlan Cole saw his world evaporate. He saw Druve's face, pale with shock. He saw Cassian's cuffs being unlocked. He did the only thing he could. He ran. He sprinted for the dark water between the containers. Alara was already moving. She saw his escape route. Her hand gripped the joystick of her chair, and she slammed it forward. The high-torque electric motor whined, and she shot across the damp pavement, her chair a blur of motion. She cut him off, her chair skidding sideways, blocking his path to the shadows. He stumbled, turning back, confused. He turned right into Ray, who had dropped silently from the warehouse roof. Ray's movements were fluid. She did not use a weapon. She used a simple, non-lethal electro-shock baton. A sharp, high-pitched zit sounded. Harlan seized, his muscles locking, and he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. It was a bloodless, precise, and profoundly anticlimactic takedown. The watching dock workers, realizing what had happened, began to cheer. Cassian rubbed his wrists where the cuffs had been. He ignored Druve, who was now in handcuffs, screaming threats. He ignored the AIB agents rounding up the shell-shocked Rivetti members. He walked straight to Alara, his eyes never leaving her face. He stood before her, the man who had just watched his entire past go up in flames. "You chose the light," he said, his voice raw. Alara looked up at the man who had trusted her with the matches. "The light," she replied, her voice steady, "needs someone to stand as a windbreak." The fall of the Rivetti crew was swift, with their digital treasuries seized and their MCA protection gone. Their accounts were frozen. They dissolved in less than a day. The Meridian Crime Authority was placed under federal receivership, and Drew's arrest led to a cascade of indictments. The Vale Syndicate was next. True to his word, Cassian met with the newly formed Harbor Accountability Board, a civilian oversight committee. He did not hide. He signed the transfer agreements. The syndicate's logistical assets, its ships and warehouses, were all legally transferred to the Sylvan Civic Network, a new, legitimate public-private partnership, monitored by Agent Fenn. Cassian Vale, Dawn of the Harbor, had officially retired. Weeks later, the storm had passed. In Alara's apartment at Gannett Pier, the familiar sound of rain tapped against the windows. He stood behind her chair, both of them watching the lights of the newly reorganized harbor. She reached back, her hand finding his. He came around, kneeling before her, just as he had in the fortress, just as he had on the parking deck. But this time, there was no fear, no desperation, only peace. Alara took the lead. She leaned forward, her hands cupping his face, drawing him in. This was not a kiss of terror or of alliance. This was a kiss of arrival. It was slow and deep and spoke of a profound, shared future. It was the feeling of safety, the feeling of being completely, entirely known, and completely, entirely wanted. His hands found her, one resting on her shoulder, the other on her back, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Her breath hitched, her body relaxing into his, a perfect trusting and complete embrace. The rain against the glass was the only sound, a soft curtain closing on the world they had fought, leaving them alone in the quiet. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. He did not have a diamond. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, dark band of metal. "It is recycled steel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "From a bolt on the old Gannett Pier Bridge. It is held strong against 100 years of storms." He held it out to her. "Let us build a house, Alara, one with ramps gentle enough for any storm." She was crying, silent tears of pure release. She nodded. "Yes." As he slid the ring onto her finger, a small voice piped up from the hallway. "Are you guys done being mushy?" Nova and Milo burst into the room, their laughter filling the quiet. Nova wheeled herself into Alara's lap, and Milo scrambled onto Cassian's back. Milo, with great seriousness, pulled a robot sticker from his pocket and pressed it onto a nearby empty picture frame. The first piece of a new family's history. Port Sylvan changed. Alara became the lead accessibility consultant for the Sylvan Civic Network, redesigning the city's infrastructure from the ground up. Cassian, having faced the civilian board, poured his legitimate funds into the Nova Milo Scholarship, a grant for disabled children with a passion for robotics. Months later, Ray sat in a new, bright office, monitoring the harbor's now legitimate security feed. A final, flickering message appeared on the long-dead anonymous channel. "Watch slip 12. They are back." Ray looked at the message, then out the window at the peaceful, thriving harbor. She smiled. "There are no dark nights," she said to the empty room. Without a light on watch, she deleted the message. The view pulled back, rising above the city, settling on a new house on the water, a house with a glass elevator. On the balcony, Cassian, Alara, Nova, and Milo stood together, hand in hand, watching the ship sail into the harbor, finally standing in the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please let us know in the comments below and share your thoughts. We invite you to subscribe to Mafia Boss Story, like this video, and support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.